It's time to get in the game with your host, Cetera J.
What's up, everybody? It is about that time. Welcome to Get in the Game with Cetera J. I'm your host, Cetera J, and today is our first day starting the new Get in the Game television show. I am so pleased that you have chosen to join me on this Tuesday evening, as well as my guest, which I'm going to introduce to you shortly. But I do want to let you know that we are broadcasting live right now on 904live.com, Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube. So run on over to my social media accounts, and you definitely want to friend me so that you can get all of this great sports show this evening live. So I want to introduce to you my guest tonight, who's joining me to discuss what I've chosen as the top 10 greatest sports moments in this last decade. Please welcome to the Get in the Game set, Coach Chris Corprew. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me this evening.
Thank you all for having me.
Awesome. So for those people who may not know you, let the Get in the Game family know who you are.
Well, like you said, my name is Chris Corprew. I'm currently the director of Coach Me Up Sports, former collegiate football coach, coached college football for about 12 years.
Wow. Okay.
From Division I all the way down to NAIA football. My last stint was at Tulane University under the helm of Coach Curtis Johnson, who is currently the senior assistant at the New Orleans Saints, wide receiver coach. Had some good guys to come through that I've trained and coached, from Antonio Brown to Lester Jean. We got a guy now, Dontrell Hilliard, at the Cleveland Browns, Jacob Johnson at the New England Patriots. So it's been a good run.
Awesome. I didn't know that you had any dealings with Antonio Brown. We may change the whole course of this show this evening just to talk about that, because as you know, Coach, he has been in the news a lot this past year. But I'll say, if we have a little time at the end of the show, maybe we can talk about that. But as you said, you're sporting the Saints hoodie tonight. So before we even start the show, because we know what happened over the weekend.
Yes. Well, we don't, as a coach, you learn to take it on the chin. There's always some things that could have been done different. Did we like the turnout of the game? No. That's 3 years in a row. Unfortunate. The guys played their hearts out. You know, coaches coached. We just didn't get the outcome that we wanted.
So. And you may not like me saying this, but I already shared it on my social media, so it's public. They basically got stunned again with another Minneapolis miracle. From a coaching perspective, what could they have done differently? Well,
that's what we said. You never, from a public standpoint, it'll always be one specific instance in a game where the public sees, well, this is what cost us the game. From a coaching standpoint, you'll go back and look at tape, and there'll be several things that we could have done different or taken advantage of. So you never should put yourself in a situation that it comes down to the decision of an official or the decision of one play.
So I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. Are y'all going to keep Teddy Bridgewater? Do you think they should keep Teddy Bridgewater?
Absolutely. So
he doesn't deserve to go be a starter somewhere else?
He does. I think that's a financial move. If you talk about for the love of the game, he's been groomed. He has put in his time to earn the right to be a starter, but he's also put in the time to earn the right at where he's at, and it's just being groomed the right way. And I think he wanted to take the time to do that so he could be continuing his own craft and his own legacy to be successful.
Awesome. So if you guys want to join the conversation with us live this evening, you can follow us on 904live.com, put some comments down there in the comment box, or you can follow me on my personal social media page. How can the people follow you, by the way?
We have Coach Me Up Sports. It's CMU-Sports on Facebook, and on Instagram it's the same, CMU-Sports.
Awesome. So follow us, join the conversation, because I know that some people are going to have some pushback in terms of what I deemed was, now guys, listen, this is Cetera J's opinion, and it just so happens that Coach Corprew decided to join me on my opinion of what have been the top greatest moments or stories in this last decade. Obviously, it's 2020. Some people consider it to be a new decade. So I did some digging, and this is not in any particular order. So first point of conversation, okay, what I felt was one of the most interesting and pivotal sports stories in the last decade, Colin Kaepernick. So we know him to be the former starting quarterback of the 49ers. He played with them for about 6 seasons. And back in the preseason of, it was the year 2016, Colin Kaepernick decided to sit during a preseason game in the beginning of the game for the national anthem. Now, Coach, I know you watch a lot of preseason. You are in tune to what's going on. Did you get a chance to see that game?
I did.
What were your thoughts initially once the news came out that Colin was protesting?
First, when I first saw it, I kind of thought it wouldn't be such a big deal. But I think what made it a big deal was the fact that the platform that was used, and the platform that was used was bigger than, if you remember growing up in a classroom, and there were people that practiced different religions, and when you had to stand up in class and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and those particular individuals didn't stand, you got done saying the pledge, you sat down, and you continued about your day. But when you're talking about a platform that reaches all over the world, you're going to have a different outcome.
That millions of people are seeing. And the interesting thing about it is he ended up having a conversation with former NFL long snapper Nate Boyer in terms of his decision to sit out, you know, during the national anthem. And I guess upon that conversation, Nate Boyer maybe encouraged him to not sit because sitting was somewhat of a sign of disrespect to our military personnel. So then Colin chose to then kneel. And at that point, his current teammate at the time, Eric Reed, decided to kneel with him. When you look at that situation, another player deciding to kind of put their career on the line, so to speak, and join in with his brother to, you know, perform such an extreme protest. Talk about just the brotherhood of football and why Eric Reed would choose to do something like that.
At the same time, I still think it boiled down to what they believe in. And I believe they were at a point in their career where they believed in what they were fighting for, what they were taking a knee for. I think it would have probably benefited both sides if it was why they took the knee. Didn't have to be hearsay or you read about it, but there was actually a moment where it was a group effort where they would say, this is the reason that we're kneeling. And it was made known to the public. So there couldn't be any assumptions made or it came from this person's mouth, but it came directly from the person that was utilizing the platform.
Well, speaking of coming directly from the person, let's dig up an old clip of Colin Kaepernick expressing why he chose to sit. So we're going to play this clip, and then we'll come back and chat about it. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Colin, here's my salute to you.
Colin Kaepernick under fire from fans and fellow players after his refusal to stand up for the national anthem, doubling down overnight.
I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed. When there's significant change and I feel like that flag represents what it's supposed to represent, I'll stand.
Kaepernick gonna run. The 49ers dual threat quarterback with the rocket arm and lightning quick feet staying seated during the national anthem at Friday's preseason game, telling the NFL Network, I'm not going to stand up and show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color.
I have experienced this. People close to me have experienced this. So it's something that needs to be addressed.
Kaepernick clarifying Sunday that refusing to honor the flag doesn't.
All right, so we heard Kaepernick say that he's not going to stand for a flag for a country of people, colored people.
Correct.
Do you think it would have been different had he maybe not chosen that term? Because we know when you look at racism, when you start talking about black, brown, colored people, people get a little touchy. So looking back on it, we can't change anything that happened. It's happened. And even still, we saw people like Marshawn Lynch sit, which Marshawn Beast Mode, who's back now. And his team pummeled my team. We're not going to get into that. But he made a point that he had been sitting even before Colin did, but no one paid attention to it. So do you think it was more so Colin's his verbiage, should I say, of saying, I'm not going to stand for a flag for a country who oppresses black people? It was like he shined a light on something that had been covered up for so long.
Right. And that's what I mean by a platform. He took basically like a magnifying glass and a super microphone and said why he was kneeling. Compared to what you said about Marshawn Lynch, it might not have been asked on the scale that was asked for Cap. So I think that played a huge role. Anytime, it doesn't matter where, if you talk about racism, you're going to get some pushback.
Absolutely.
And at the global scale that he did it at, there was definitely going to be some pushback.
Okay, before we move on, I just want to get your opinion of this. So earlier last year, it's 2020 now, so back in February of 2019, Colin Kaepernick and the NFL reached a settlement over the grievance that he filed against them. A couple months later, in November, we see the NFL extend an opportunity to Colin Kaepernick to have a private workout that they set up.
Right.
Now, a lot of people felt as though that was a gimmick.
Right.
What was your opinion of it then, and what do you think about it now that at this point we really haven't even heard anything since it happened, since Colin decided to take matters into his own hands and basically host his own workout? What was your opinion of it?
When it first came out, it was interesting when they talked about the waiver, the way the workout was supposed to take place. Some people had concerns about the date of the workout, if it followed the traditional workout that a player would receive trying to get an opportunity to make a team. I think his people did the right protecting their own component, which was Cap. I feel like, did he get a fair shot at getting an opportunity? I don't think there needed to be a platform for him to be able to show that, hey, I'm still capable of playing in the league. I think that could have took place anywhere, and I think it could have took place without a public, having to watch or see. It's not us that he needs to convince that he still can play in the NFL. It was basically what he wanted. He wanted the right people to be there for him to get a fair opportunity. And I think they felt like we need the right audience to be there to say that he did receive one.
Yeah.
But I think if people were going about their business in a professional manner and using integrity, I think the right evaluations would have been conducted. And if you kept it business, I don't think he would have had anything to worry about. But I think on his part and on his team's part, they didn't want to take any chances.
Yeah, and because they didn't want to take any chances, now there may not be a chance for him to play.
Right.
As of right now in the NFL, we'll see what happens. There's a lot of what appears to be progression in the NFL, but we'll see if that progression will open the door for somebody like Colin Kaepernick to play again. Moving along to what Cetera J feels is another major topic that happened in this last decade, and that would be the sexual abuse scandals that broke out in college and professional sports. So first we initially heard about Jerry Sandusky, former assistant coach at Penn State, who, in doing my research, there was documentation that dated years before it came out. What do you think that did to the college world? How shocking do you think that was?
I think a lot of different entities were affected when that took place. Not just on a coaching level, but when you look from the standpoint of, imagine all of the kids that go to summer camps, football summer camps, and now in a parent's head, there's a doubt.
Yeah.
Is my child safe being sent away to a team camp? This was something in football that this is how we build teams.
Right.
This is how your players bond with each other. So I think a huge trust was broken. And for the university, very, very disheartening. And that's something hard to bounce back from. So far, it looks like they're doing well, bouncing back. But I think that's a memory that cannot be erased.
Yeah.
And definitely shouldn't be forgotten.
Yeah, and especially how it kind of took place, because if we remember in the midst of all that, Joe Paterno passed away.
Absolutely.
And Penn State had to pay out $100 million in settlement to those kids and their families from the nightmare of that situation. So on the other end, you have someone like Larry Nazar, who at the end of that case, I think it was some 150 women that came out and gave their testimony to the sexual abuse that they endured at his hand. What was the difference, in your opinion, in the situation? Because on one hand, you have a coach, and on the other hand, you have someone who's a trusted, somewhat of an athletic trainer that, you know, you're sending your kids to for treatment and supposing that they're being well taken care of.
Right. I think the trust issue on both components, the only difference is I think you're dealing with from adults to a child.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a child can't defend itself. And you're talking about something where a child is going to grow with this, you know, for years to come. As an adult, there's a decision to, somewhere inside of you, you know, this doesn't feel right, or there's something that should be done about this, and it's whether you decide to go forth with it. But I think if you feel violated, there's definitely where you need to speak forward. Unfortunately, in the case of the kids, they didn't have a speaker box or someone that they could go talk to.
Right, absolutely. So let's move on from that, and let's play this clip to introduce my next topic, which I know you have some great opinions about, amateurism. So let's hear from what some people consider to be the greatest basketball player of all time. Not in my opinion, because I am a true and through, as you see, the red and black Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan fans. But let's hear from LeBron James and his stance and support on the Fair Pay to Play Act.
Okay. I think it's a great day. I think it's a win, obviously, here in California. And, you know, like I said, I'm just honored to be a part of it and be with the governor, and for him to understand what a lot of these athletes have been going through for so many years.
LeBron speaking on, I think it was just moments after the governor of the state of California passed the Fair Play to Pay Act, which will not really go into effect until 2023. And basically that Fair Play Act says that the NCAA cannot keep athletes from receiving money for their likeness or their image. They cannot get any pushback from the NCAA on that. Right. There has been discussion about this, that it changes the amateurism of sport. Now, as a former college athlete, I will say this. I wish somebody would have been sliding me some kind of a stipend all those years when I was running track, but it didn't happen. So now the fact that these kids have an opportunity, the issue I think with it is, how do you judge what athletes get what sum of money? Because I'll say this, and you know this, Coach, being a football coach, I think the track girls got so much respect from football players because of how hard we train. So I'm training 2-a-days, I'm running miles to prepare for my sport. Who's to say I shouldn't get as much as a football player, even though they may be bringing in more money? The point is, as an athlete, if I feel I should get paid just like the starting quarterback because of what I'm enduring physically, what's your opinion on that?
I think they're going to have to come up with a stipend. I think what this is going to do is just going to bring everything forward on the board. I think what's going to happen is there's not going to be, they're going to strive to get equity instead of equality. And the difference is going to be is now the smaller schools are going to have an opportunity to present themselves to an athlete just a little more. Because a smaller school, if they were to give an illegal bonus or a gift, or for it to be misunderstood that they gave an illegal bonus or a gift, they wouldn't survive the penalty.
Right.
They wouldn't survive the suspension or the probation or the taking of scholarships. Compared to a larger university, they would survive it. So when you talk about also with being the different sports and what they should be awarded, there's going to have to be a clear definition of what should be awarded. But the thing is, I don't think it's going to be based on, definitely don't base it on performance. It's going to almost be like how you have to have gender equity.
Right, so, equal. It needs to be equal. And let's just say this, if the NCAA doesn't come up with something soon, these states are going to create their own individual laws and just to get out of hand. And this is what I mean. Right now, if I was a parent, I would either be moving to California or I would be moving to New York. And here's why. New York, the governor of New York, his version of the Fair to Pay Play Act is coming out possibly this year, and he is putting a clause in there that says universities have to give 15% of revenue from ticket sales and split that evenly amongst athletes on all teams.
I think that's
the
awesome.
NCAA is not going to, that's the last video on it. The NCAA is not going to be able to get a handle on that. No. And when you look at states like Colorado, Florida, Minnesota, all coming out with their version of it this year, Kentucky, Chicago, Nevada, Pennsylvania are all in the works. The NCAA is in trouble.
Right.
And we know they make a lot of money, but they need to share some of that revenue.
Absolutely. There's definitely going to have to be a modification with the NCAA. Kind of like the educational school system, there's different ways to teach. And I think the NCAA, they have been the only voice that can speak or render judgment. So now they're going to have to make an adjustment.
Yes.
You had money coming from one pot. Now governments are looking at, you think about it, if I'm a state university, those funds come into my state. We also pay the taxes for those universities and for these employees. So why should we not have a say-so in how these funds are distributed?
Or what they're going to find, and it's a topic that I'll be bringing up again in February because the XFL has now come around, and they're allowing kids to come in straight from high school, and they're going to pay them to be professional athletes. So what the NCAA is going to run into is they're going to lose their athletes. Now we know this is not going to happen overnight, and they have some time to try to get this thing under control. But the point is, at the end of the day, some of you guys need to start having children so that by the time this bill is passed, your kids are going to get paid to go to college and play a sport. So moving along, speaking of fair pay to play, another big story, in my opinion, this year, being a female, was the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team suing the U.S. Soccer Federation for non-equal pay.
Right.
Obviously, one of the biggest arguments is that men's soccer brings out a lot more ticket sales, a lot more fandom, a lot more sales and paraphernalia than women's soccer team does.
Correct.
But the women have a case. If we're playing the same amount of games, have the same length of season, why are they almost getting $10,000 less per game to play the same sport?
I think this is actually going to open up a different can of worms.
Okay. Different can.
And there's going to be, let me give you an example. Let's say they say, okay, we agree to pay you what?
Equal.
So that's one sport. Now think about all the other professional sports.
Oh, yeah.
It would be a no-brainer for an attorney to say, I have a client that's a WNBA basketball player.
Absolutely.
So we need to have an equivalent salary that the NBA is giving, that Major Baseball is giving. So now you're talking about, that's what I say when I say open up a can of worms.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very, very strategic in the way they make the decision on how that should be. Once again, I say equity, fair distributing salaries.
Yeah. And we'll find out soon enough because that federal case, and it's going before a jury, and that's going to be decided this coming May, which is interesting in the placement of it because that's going to be a couple weeks away from the start of the Summer Olympics. So we will see what happens there. So moving along, next big story I felt, because I feel like it opened up the door to the doping agency to really do more research on these performance-enhancing drugs.
Correct.
The story, the rise and the fall, shall we say, of Lance Armstrong. And there's probably some people watching who don't even know who that is. But I'll use Oprah. We'll let Oprah tell you who it is. So let's play the short clip and we'll come back and talk about it.
Yes or no? Did you ever take banned substances to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
Yes or no? Was one of those banned substances EPO?
Yes.
Did you ever blood dope or use blood transfusions to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
Did you ever use any other banned substances like testosterone, cortisone, or human growth hormone?
Yes.
Yes or no? In all 7 of your Tour de France victories, did you ever take banned substances or blood dope?
Yes.
In your...
So, I'm Oprah, you're Lance. Why, other than it being Oprah, because I feel like everybody tells Oprah everything. But at this point, you know, he had been fighting against the doping agency to say that they were against him, and I mean, it was going to get out of hand. Why choose to do it this way, knowing that you're going to be stripped of all of your titles?
I can't speak for him. I can say there's a lot of different angles. You can look at the career. The competitive career is over. If you wanted to look at it from a financial standpoint, okay, here comes the book.
Yeah.
If you wanted to look at it from a heartfelt guilt standpoint, it's my moment to confess, you know, and let me do it. Once again, we talk about platforms. Let me do it on one of the largest platforms, just as large as the one that I competed in. I think more than anything, that same platform, use it for an apology, because for the other competitors that were in that race and the way they trained, and if those guys did it the right way, you did take the opportunity from one of those guys to be a champion.
To win. And those are moments you can't get back.
Absolutely.
I mean, even though he has to give back the titles, you can't do the race over again. And so whoever was in second place is pretty much pissed at this point, because you can't redo a lot of opportunities missing. You're talking about over a span of a couple years. So 11 former teammates and 15 other witnesses testified against him. And one of them said it was the most sophisticated, professionalized, and successful doping scandal that the cycling world had ever seen. Wow. What do you think that did for sports like football, baseball? Because shortly after that, we saw a trickle effect of PEDs being opened up and exposed in other sports.
I think just like they said, because the technology is so far beyond, like the Olympics. Sometimes it takes the Olympics to come back 3-4 years later.
Right.
It's not because those tests or those labs are just sitting idle. It's because they're finding different ways, innovative ways every day to test for these illegal performance enhancement drugs.
Right. Awesome. So, listen, we know that nowadays people are taking all types of supplements, and they're seeing all kinds of doctors. And I mean, you heard in his talk there with Oprah that he was even getting blood transfusions. And so nowadays athletes just have to be very careful. And I know that the NCAA has something set up to where, as an incoming athlete, you get this book on, even things like green tea, depending on the antioxidant levels. You get tested for that, you could be banned. Yes. So the NCAA has even sharpened up their rules on making sure that their college athletes don't get caught in such a scandal. So let's move on to one of, actually ESPN voted LeBron James the most decorated athlete in the last decade, most successful. And one thing that I thought was fascinating, one of the most intriguing stories in this last decade was LeBron James, the decision, this whole ESPN special. So I got a little clip of that, and we'll get back to just our opinion on this and what it did for athlete autonomy.
All right.
The answer to the question everybody wants to know. LeBron, what's your decision?
In this fall, man, this is very tough. In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
Miami Heat. That was the conclusion you woke up with this morning.
That was the conclusion I woke up with this morning.
Why?
So we don't need to hear why, but in this clip, what is hilarious to me is the person on the other side that we don't see, but we hear his response in Miami. Like, he was shocked at the same time. So the thing, LeBron got a lot of pushback for this, and I think one of the reasons he got pushback was nobody knew his decision until this was broadcasted. There were reports that said just a few moments before this ESPN special aired, Cleveland found out. but none of the other teams that were pursuing him, so to speak, had any idea what his decision was going to be. What do you think this did for athletes taking a stand and saying, this is my career, this is how I'm going to choose to govern myself in my career, and what do you think this did for that?
I think this opened up awesome opportunities for other athletes to step out on their own faith or trust themselves. Granted that you do pay an agent to make decisions for you, but like you said, at the end of the day, it is your career. You'll always hear coaches speak from the standpoint of, if the ship's going to go down, I want to be driving the ship when it goes down.
Right.
So when you talk about an athlete, if I'm going to go with who I feel best, if I'm chasing championships, then I want to be somewhere where I have the opportunity to win a championship. If I want to be the highest scorer in the NBA, then I'm going to find a team where that's what I want to do. So if me and my agent, my team, we're on the same page, we have like attainment, then that's what we're gonna make that decision. I think was it the decision, or was it the fact that he kept it a secret that they were upset about?
I think it was the fact that he kept it a secret. And the way, that was the first time we ever saw an athlete do something in that magnitude. Because first of all, it created what we saw as the first big three. Because here you have LeBron, and he's going to join Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. One of the pushbacks he received was on Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson. Both agreed that they would have never, back in the 80s and 90s, you don't go join the team that's basically been beating you. You don't go join forces with, you don't make allies out of your enemies, basically. And so LeBron got some extreme, I mean, that's when people started burning jerseys, and it got out of him, but I think it was the way he chose to do it. But what some people don't know is he raised money. $2.5 million went to a Boys and Girls Club in Connecticut, and another $3.5 million went to other charities of his choice. So I think we kind of saw, first of all, ESPN had to agree to do it his way. And I think that was something that we hadn't seen done before. And so I think it just created a space where now you see athletes, like we just had it happen on Monday when Tua said, I'm going to announce my decision when I want to. I'm going to do it on ESPN. It's going to be a live press conference that everyone's going to watch at 12 noon. I'm going to stand here with my coach and announce that I'm taking my talents to the NFL. And then we know that everyone started using that phrase. I'm taking my talents to this place. I'm taking my talents to this place. So it created something that I think has trickled into now athletes saying, I don't need you. You need me. And I think that's important. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're being able to make the decisions. I think it was, maybe they were making the decisions behind closed doors, but now they're deciding to be outspoken about it. I don't need my agent to speak for me publicly anymore. I can announce my decision. It's my business. I just have someone helping me structure it. And that's, at the end of the day, that is what it is. It's a business. It's a business.
Yeah, and I'll put a plug here. One thing that I had the pleasure of doing that my parents kind of turned over me was when my brother was getting ready to transition from college to the NFL, and agents are knocking down your door and teams want workouts. One thing I had to tell my brother is, I said, remember, you're the asset. They need you. You don't need them. So that's the way you choose an agent. Obviously, when you're going to the NFL, whoever calls, you pick up the phone, you make the decision. But even in terms of now, we're seeing athletes representing themselves. They're not even using agents. Because at the end of the day, if I can keep this 2, 3, 4% in my pocket, that's going to help me continue to build generational wealth for my family. So thank you, LeBron. I can thank him for one thing. I still don't think he's the greatest basketball player ever. Really quickly, MJ or LeBron? Or Kobe?
I'm a MJ.
MJ. Okay, great. I was going to have to kick you off the set if you said LeBron. You could have said Kobe and I would have been okay with that. All right, let's move on to, I'm going to play this clip. So I'm typically not a baseball fan, but there is just something about this clip of the Cubs winning the World Series and ending a 108-year drought that moves you. If this doesn't move you, you can't be moved. So let's take a listen.
Done it before. Here's the 0-1. This is going to be a tough play. Bryant, the Cubs winning the World Series. Bryant makes the play. It's over. And the Cubs have finally won it all. It's 7-10.
So let's go through this little play-by-play. So you have Mike Montgomery at the plate. You have Chris Bryant over in midfield, kind of like third base. And you have Anthony Rizzo on first base. I think besides the crack of the ball, I love that sound. There's something about the sound of a bat smashing a ball. And it just, the blood rushes through my body. One thing I love about the clip, though, is you immediately see Anthony Rizzo after he catches the ball. Did you catch it? Did you see what he did?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh, yeah, you can't see it. I'm sorry. He put the ball in his back pocket. To steal.
Yeah,
you would, right? I love that part of it. But what did this do for sports in general? Because at this point, you have Cleveland Browns fans who have been wearing bags over their faces. But the Chicago Cubs, 108 years?
That's a long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah. Whether you like them or not, everybody at some point loves the underdog.
Yeah.
And just to see somebody catch a break, it's like you said, 108 years. And that's a prominent ball club. So to see them to get the opportunity to celebrate a championship, awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, awesome opportunity for the city, for the ball club, for the players, and just imagine all the different ball players and coaches that have been through that never, came close, but just didn't get to celebrate.
Yeah.
Winning the World Series.
Yeah, and not to mention that, first of all, that Game 7 went for 5 hours. Right, and they were playing a team in the Cleveland Indians. Both teams had the 2 longest droughts in Major League Baseball. So really, at the end of the day, whoever won, it was going to be some history made. It just so happens that they were in Cleveland when it happened, but the Chicago Cubs won. So moving along to Donald Sterling, probably one of the most, in terms of racism and comments being made by owners, almost a situation where you feel like players may have known there was some racism there, but until it comes out and you hear the audio from TMZ, unfortunately for Donald Sterling, his girlfriend released the videotape, not his wife, so, you judge on that yourself. But let's take a listen to what the crew had to say, Chuck, Kenny, and Shaq, on the report when it came out.
Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Shaquille O'Neal. Normally we would break down this game in depth, but there is a developing story that we need to address. The NBA is investigating racist remarks allegedly made by LA Clippers owner Donald Sterling in a phone call with his girlfriend. It's an audio tape obtained by TMZ. In that conversation, the man believed to be Sterling takes issue with his girlfriend posting a picture of herself with Magic Johnson and posting it on Instagram saying, quote, "It bothers me a lot that you want to broadcast that you're associating with black people. Do you have to?" He goes on to say, "You can sleep with them, you can bring them in, you can do whatever you want. The little I ask is you not to promote it and not to bring them to my games." The NBA has issued this statement. We're in the process of conducting a full investigation into the audio recording obtained by TMZ. The remarks heard on the recordings are disturbing and offensive, but at this time we have no further information.
So we know that the further information that they received was that that story was true. And I think the big point here is we saw Adam Silver step up in a way that was remarkable on behalf of the players. He basically led a push to force Donald Sterling to sell his franchise. We know this went on it actually only went on for a couple months. The NBA was able to, the NBA along with Adam Silver, they actually headed the process of finding a new owner. But in terms of, from a coach's perspective, you're Doc Rivers, right? You're coaching the Clippers. This comes out right before Game 4 of a playoff game against the Golden State Warriors. What do you tell your players?
It's a hard one to swallow, but if you're just speaking from a, hey, let's play ball standpoint, those guys face a lot of different type of adversity. And that's almost, when you look at it, it's almost like it's an in-house issue.
Right.
Guys, we got to go out. We got to play this game. This is something that's in-house that we're going to deal with. We are going to take care of it. I think ensuring your players that it will be taken care of,
right,
it shows them where you stand and that you're not just using them for looking at them as a product.
Right.
So I think if the players were provided that confidence that it is an issue to me, it is something that will be handled. But at this point right now, guys, let me let you go out and do your jobs. And I need you to trust in me that we're going to take care of this.
Yeah, and he allowed them, so to speak, to have a protest before the game. In the beginning of that game, they took off their warm-up jackets and threw them in the middle of the court. And then we also saw, which I felt like spoke to just the band of brotherhood that the NBA is, regardless of, we're in the middle of the playoffs right now, and as a Golden State Warrior, you know, we want to beat you. But the Golden State Warriors had actually, they were going to not play in that Game 5 had something not been done or promised to be done against the opposing team's owner. So I think it kind of just spoke to sports is a family. Right. And whether we're on the same team and competing against each other or not, when something comes up that affects one, it affects all. Absolutely. And so I just appreciated the way, first of all, the way that it was handled, in decency and order, but quickly. It was done very quickly, and so I appreciate that. Let's move on to story number 9, something that's near and dear to my heart, obviously being a female in the world of sports. Hannah Storm, Andrea Kramer, about 2 years ago, announced that they would be calling the first NFL game. What did that do for the sport of football?
I think awesome. I think now you're getting to hear it from a different standpoint. And I think now it gives women an opportunity that I don't have to watch a football game because my boyfriend or my husband is watching it, or that's the social place to go. But, you know, they say men and women speak different languages. So I would find it peculiar that, okay, we have more women now interested in watching football. And some women are watching and say, I can't grasp it. But now they have an opportunity to. Somebody that'll take the time and explain the game, but just with the same intellect, no different as if it was a male providing the play-by-play. So I think it's an awesome opportunity, and I hope to see more.
Yeah, and so Amazon Prime offered it as an alternative. If you don't want to listen to Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, you can listen to the sweet, soft voices of Hannah Storm and Andrea Kramer. One day they'll be listening to Cetera J. What do you think?
I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. Before we close out, in my opinion, some of the most amazing athletes that we've seen in the last decade, just give 1 or 2 words. Michael Phelps.
Awesome.
Awesome, incredible swimmer.
Yes.
Yeah. Most decorated Olympian in the history of Olympics as of now, because in my opinion, Simone Biles.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she's going to catch him. We know she's the most decorated gymnast of all time. Yeah. Serena Williams.
Yes. Unbelievable, hands down.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And it's funny, I have a friend that is a very good friend of her father's, and he actually comes to Jacksonville. Okay. And he comes to visit this friend, and he was telling a story about the persistency and how determined he was for his girls to play tennis. They used to have, in their house, they had a, you know how the kitchen, you can open it up and close it. And they say the girls he would take a basket of tennis balls, and they had to serve from standing on the outside into the kitchen, through that little window, into the basket to come get breakfast. So it was 24/7. And I think that was one of the most awesome stories that you could hear about a dad just committing himself to make sure that their girls fulfill their dream.
And it paid off, and she's currently right now playing in the Australian Open, which is a tournament she won a couple years ago when she was pregnant with her daughter, Alexis O'Hannon. And then lastly, I'll just mention Usain Bolt as a track and field athlete, one of the greatest sprinters of all time that we've ever seen. Listen, time runs runs out when you're having fun. So we're going to close out this evening. Just reminding you guys that we are here every Tuesday evening at 6:30 p.m. and Get in the Game with Cetera J. You can follow me on social media, Instagram and Twitter at Bunch of Legs. That's BUNCHE, the letter A, LEGZZ, and you can also follow me on Facebook. Tune in next week. We're going to have an amazing show on nutrition and the health of an athlete from the perspective of what they put in their bodies. Thank you guys for joining me. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.